Do you want to use Zoom for your sales presentations? Are you shy of going on camera and would like to appear confident on your next Zoom meeting? Well, in this video, we're going to focus on using Zoom successfully for our sales presentations. To help us effectively use Zoom, we will seek the guidance of a Zoom expert. Anthony English is a business coach who, like all of us, uses Zoom for business. Anthony has taken Zoom one step further and has established a successful YouTube channel teaching every aspect of Zoom. Anthony understands the power of video. He has a 1 minute, 39-second video on Zoom that has attracted 139,000 views. On that note, let's get started. Hello, it's Ken Robinson, where we help you grow your business with proven sales and marketing techniques. If you're new here, then make sure you click the subscribe button and don't forget to reach out and say hello in the comments. And all the links to everything I mention in this video, you can find those links in the description box below. It was 7 years ago when one of my clients said to me, "Why don't you try selling online?" I said, what do you mean? He said, "Well, why don't you do a webinar?" Well, webinars changed the way I did business. And then was the introduction of Zoom. And then was the introduction of the pandemic. And everything has changed. No longer are we meeting in person, we're doing sales presentations on Zoom. And to help us to find out about that, I'm joined by an expert. Well, he's taught himself every aspect of Zoom there is to know. You can actually go to his website. His name is Anthony English, and on his website, he has got various videos teaching you aspects of Zoom, and he joins us. Hello, Anthony.
Great to be with you, Ken. And yeah, that's the YouTube channel that you saw, which is a great way for people to learn about Zoom because it's video, right?
How do you think Zoom has changed the way that you do business?
Well, for me, it's actually been a much smaller change because I was already active on Zoom. But what has been really fascinating for me is how effectively it's broken through the barriers for other people. For many people that I've spoken to, they had up until 2020 had never been on a video call, never considered being on a one-on-one call or on an interview or doing videos at all. And so obviously the pandemic, particularly in some countries, has meant that people are working from home, are using Zoom and not just using the phone or email or social media. And it's very much helped them to break through a lot of the barriers that they had, especially the mental ones, I suppose, about getting on camera.
So taking into account the barriers that people have, I mean, looking at a camera, looking down the barrel of the camera, but, you know, I'm like everybody else, I feel uncomfortable. When you bring in the aspect of actually doing a sales presentation where your income is on the line, what suggestions do you have for people who are used to meeting in person? I mean, you think about the average meeting that we're used to. We sit down, we have a cup of coffee, we have a bit of chit chat, and then we pull out our presentation folder or our PowerPoints. How do you overcome the fact that you're in another room and sometimes in another country when you're on Zoom?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question. And I think in some ways the pandemic has helped a lot of us to break through those barriers because we're just kind of more used to not having, you know, the perfect setting, if you like. But one of the big challenges that you have, well, think of that example that you've just given of, let's say that we're in the same room. Well, let's say that we're having coffee and you're trying to sell something to me or the other way around. What else have we got going on apart from the sales presentation? Well, we've got, you've ordered the coffee, I'll pay for it, or the other way around, and we've got a few distractions happening. And so the focus isn't only on me staring at you the way that it happens on Zoom. And so that itself has it creates a barrier once you go to Zoom, because it's just you and me talking together. We're not kind of looking around, and worse still, I'm not looking at you. I'm actually looking at a green light, which is even harder. Or maybe I'm looking at myself. And so what I really find very helpful. Imagine that we were in the same room and talking to each other. Would you be focusing, if you're uncomfortable on camera, and would you be thinking about the sound waves going between you and me? Would you be thinking about the air and the sound waves and those sort of things? Of course you wouldn't. You would that would really cramp your conversation, wouldn't it?
No, I mean, you would be focused on the other person. I mean, the success in selling. I mean, I always talk about selling that you've got to listen to that radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Me, exactly.
But the funny thing is, I mean, I'm sitting in my home studio. I've got lights above me. I've got a camera. I'm looking down the barrel of a camera. There's the technical problems. I mean, how do I bring the
Yep,
PowerPoint presentation in? What
sure.
buttons do I press? I mean, is it a hard transition, or are we making
Yeah.
a bigger thing than it really is?
Oh no, well, for some people it can be really, really hard. Some people will even say that they've got social anxiety in general, and so that alone makes it hard. And that feeling that you're walking onto a stage with a group of people or with one other person, perhaps somebody that you've never spoken to before, can be really quite intimidating. So what I really recommend is to see what can you do to replicate that natural environment where you and I are talking together over coffee. So here's one way of doing it. I've actually got a coffee here, and I saw Bill Gates do that. He was being interviewed on, I don't know, CNN or something, and it was a formal TV interview, and he was dialing in from home on Zoom, and I saw him reach for his coffee. And I thought, my goodness, if he
Well, I
can
mean,
do it.
unfortunately, we don't have the budget for a cup of coffee. We'll just let you enjoy it.
And so, what other things can you do to make it minimal, to minimize, for example, with the technology, if you find the technology intimidating, and a lot of people do, and even us technical people do sometimes, which is kind of good to know, then what can you do to prepare that? Very simple things, like you might say, instead of my PowerPoint presentation, I'm actually going to write it here and show it to you. Something really, really simple, because then you don't necessarily have to be worrying about PowerPoint presentations and things like that. Now, if your comfort zone is much more in using a PowerPoint, using some sort of presentation, then do that. What other things can you do in preparation, in breaking the ice, in really making it as natural a conversation as possible? What other things can you do, not only to make it easy for you, but to make it easy for the other person as well? Because chances are they also are finding it a little bit daunting going
So
on.
what you're saying is that in reality, the presentation style of Zoom may be different, but basically it all comes down to just common communication. I mean, in fact, I mean, this is the interesting thing about the sales world, the marketing world. We start off with print, then we went into media, then we went into social media, websites, sales funnels, and so forth. And with all of this technology, I think people often are positioned where they think, oh, I've got to know the latest technology. But at the end of
Yeah,
the
no,
day, I often say in my sales workshops, and I work in about 60 different industry sectors, so I have people from all different walks of life. Often ask the question, who here has bought a motor car? Who here has purchased a telephone? And everybody's hand goes up in the room. And the reality is, even though Zoom is a different way of selling, it's not really. Would I be correct in saying that sales hasn't changed? Because at the end of the day, it's about showing somebody that if they work with you, you can be a success.
Well, that's exactly the point, which is that it's that classic win-win thing, that it's not you versus me, that like you're the enemy or that I've got to overcome you or something like that. It's, hey, together, how can you're here, you're in point A, you're on this side of the river, you want to get to the other side of the river. So the first thing I need to understand is, how well do I understand and how well do you understand where you are right now and where you want to be and why do you want to cross the river in the first place? And then we focus less on how we're going to get you there, focus less about the boat or the ferry or the raft. And so similarly with Zoom, you focus less on the technology itself and focus instead on the message, on the person that you're speaking to. And that's why an interview style such as we're doing now is in a sense much easier than me just speaking to the camera and imagining the audience. It's really to look, not so much to look at the camera, although I'm actually doing that right now, but it's to look through the camera to the person at the other side. And now, what is it that I'm able to do to help you to get from where you are to where you want to be?
Well, I can't help myself. I'm into technology just as much as anybody else. So before we wrap this up, Zoom is new to me. I mean, I'm successfully doing presentations, but having looked at your website channel, where you have multiple videos on utilizing Zoom, what tips and techniques, what things might we not know about Zoom that might help us?
Okay, so one thing is that it's really around getting comfortable with things like even turning off your camera. Now, what happens when you turn off your camera on Zoom is that you get your profile photo come up. So I know that's a really simple thing, but just being able to know how to turn off your camera or how to mute yourself, it can really, I know that's as I say, a very, very simple thing to me. But something like that can just give you that confidence that, I've got a bit of background noise here, on how to stop that. And knowing that you are able to, so you asked about some things that people are not really so familiar with about Zoom. One thing that can be extremely frustrating is actually getting the meeting on your calendar and where to start it and how to find the link. And so I have a very short video on how to do that on my YouTube channel. And setting that up can just make it so much easier. I think you and I did this just yesterday, where we were on a call and we agreed on a time, and I sent you the calendar invitation, which already had the Zoom link in it. And so that small investment of time, and that took me maybe 5 minutes to set up. If you follow my video on how to do that, then that saves you all of that frustration before the meeting of, setting things up ahead of time and thinking, how do I do it? And can you send me the link and these sort of things? A couple of other things that are very helpful on Zoom. One is being able to share your screen so that you can, if you have a presentation that you want to share, there is a whiteboard option as well, so that allows you to write on the screen together. Another thing that I think is really rarely used, but is really important, especially if you're working together, if you're kind of brainstorming, for example, brainstorming on topics that you're going to write. Let's say that you're a copywriter and you're going to be writing some copy for your client. Well, then you might open a Zoom, a document on Zoom, a whiteboard. But what you could actually do is open a Google Doc and share that. And so what that means is that after the Zoom call is over, you and your client both have access to that document to go and edit it. Once again, I've got
One,
another short video on how to do that.
one last point. Since
Mm,
I've started using Zoom and I've been
yeah,
selling online, for want of a better word,
sure.
for the last 7 years,
Yeah.
and I teach this in my selling course, Virtual Selling. One of the things
Mm,
that I've done is I've deliberately not turned on my camera. I've made the focus of my presentation the PowerPoint because now, and I'd love your feedback on this, but for me, the information on those PowerPoint presentations, the testimonials, the examples of my success, I think are far more important than looking at me. The other thing, I find that that little image of yourself down in the right hand corner or wherever you place it is quite distracting. Because at the end of the day, a good salesperson really takes somebody on a journey and shows them that they're at point A and that by following the salesperson's guidance, they can go to point Z. Now, to make that, I would rather use a PowerPoint presentation. That's my approach. I don't like appearing on camera because,
mm,
well, some days I don't have a good hair day and I don't have the right setup. My office may be untidy and
sure.
I hate those virtual backgrounds. I mean, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? Do we need to appear on camera if we're using a PowerPoint presentation? Is it
So,
absolutely essential? And having
mhm,
waving palm trees in the back,
mhm.
is that a good look?
So I think the virtual background. So for those not familiar with the terminology, that's the background behind you that can look like a TV studio, or it can be a beach in Hawaii or something else. I have noticed, especially lately, I have noticed on TV that people are using those virtual backgrounds a lot less. And that they've obviously got sometimes a pretty messy bookshelf behind them or something like that, which is a much more natural feel, I think. Let me ask you a question. When you go to a coffee shop and you have your presentation, does your prospect, your client, see you as well, look at you as well, or are they just looking at the presentation?
Well, obviously they are looking at me. I mean, in actual fact, I just before the pandemic happened, I did a presentation in North Sydney to a managing director of a rather large company, and I was expecting to do the presentation in a boardroom because I had my
Yep.
folder with all my examples. And he said, "No, no, no, let's go down for a coffee shop." And we
Right.
went down to this local coffee, and here I am perched on this small little table. On these, he's on a stool, I'm on a stool, and we're presenting. Now there were hundreds of people around us, but at the end of the day, we were so focused on each other that we
Yep.
forgot the background.
So exactly. So what I would really suggest here, I find, look, I do understand that some people do find it really very intimidating, very confronting to go on camera. But what I would suggest is, at least, especially if you're pre-recording a video, which is a slightly different question, different situation to what you're suggesting here. I do recommend that you do at least go on camera at least at the beginning, and then if you want, you can remove yourself completely from the turn off your camera so that all of the focus is on the presentation. But I do think that it is very, very helpful, especially if you're doing a webinar or something. It's very helpful for people to make first that initial contact with you on video, not just your picture, not just your photo, but with you actually on video. Once they've done that, I think that human connection has been made, and from then on, for sure, you can turn off your camera and then just focus on the presentation if that's how you like to present things.
So if people want to find anything more, get some of your tips, you have a YouTube channel.
The
How do they find
YouTube
that
channel.
YouTube channel?
Yeah, so we can include the link to that YouTube channel, but the real way of finding it is not to look up my name. You may not remember my name, which is Anthony English, and they may be watching this in a month or two, and they may not remember my name. But you should be able to find me simply by going onto YouTube or even onto Google and looking up how to about Zoom.
And your
And
videos are getting great reaction. I was quite fascinated. You've got one video there goes for 1 minute 39 seconds, which seems a really short time. How many
it
views
is a
did that
good
get?
one. Yeah, so that one's got up to 155,000 views, which has completely amazed me because it's not a the video itself isn't slick. It's not beautifully edited. It's got quite poor lighting, and but that's not an issue because it answers a very deep emotional problem. What's the emotional problem is how do I turn off my camera? Well, that sounds like a technical problem, but in fact, people are searching for things like how do I hide my face? How do I not show my face? How can I make my teacher not see me, not have to look? How do I not see myself on camera? And so those really emotional questions that people are searching for, and that happens to be a technical solution to an emotional problem.
So, if they want to find out more, I understand that you have a consulting practice. You help women launch businesses and grow their businesses. Where can they contact you?
I do, and so that's the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, where I'm also very, very active as I am on YouTube, and so yeah, they'll find me under the name Anthony English on LinkedIn, or once again, we can include a link
Well, Anthony
to that.
English, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and giving us some insights into Zoom and how we can use it to improve both our sales and marketing. Thanks a lot. Bye for
Yeah.
now.